Hey, what's going on, everybody? So, no one wants to talk about the possible sentencing that R. Kelly could receive if he loses his case. Now, one of the common reasons or the common thread of logic that people seem to be using is one, he's innocent, or two, the case that is being brought against him is 100% BS, or it's 100% nonsense, or it's a weak case, so on and so forth. Now, what I believe is that it really doesn't matter whether or not he's innocent. It doesn't matter if the case is weak. The only thing that matters is whether or not R. Kelly can put on a good defense. And for the most part, in my personal opinion, we don't know what defense, what type of defense, or how good or how bad the defense will be. The best that was done, in my opinion, or the only thing that was done, is when R. Kelly had the publicist. I thought that was a really good touch, and I thought that he was doing a fair enough job. And I thought that R. Kelly should have kept on with having a publicist to represent him in public. And actually, I think the guy wasn't actually a publicist. He was a crisis manager. But I'm going to come out and say the public appearances that he made was good for R. Kelly. Now, his R. Kelly's lawyers aren't really obligated to put on a public defense or a defense in public. Their only job is to basically represent him in court and put on a really good defense, right? So, with that said, I'm just going to say, repeat. I'm just going to repeat that it doesn't matter whether or not the case is weak. It doesn't matter whether or not R. Kelly is innocent or guilty. And to prove this, I'm going to read a story to you. Now, I'm going to say up front that I'm not an authority on Christianity, and I am a Christian. If possible, I would like to have everyone, whether you're a Christian or not a Christian, to kind of put religion aside for as much as you can, right? And just take the story for face value. Basically, in that sense, you have Jesus, a person going around helping people, healing people, and helping people, find their way in this world, right? Just take the story for face value, right? Just put religion aside, right? So in this story, Matthew 27, verse 15 through 26, it goes on to read. Now it was the governor's custom at a festival to release a prisoner chosen by the crowd. So whoever the crowd chooses, the governor will basically let them go. At the time, they had a well-known prisoner whose name was Barabbas. So when the crowd had gathered, Pilate asked them, "Which one do you want me to release to you, Barabbas or Jesus, who is called the Messiah?" For he knew it was out of self-interest that they handed Jesus over to him. While Pilate was sitting on the judge's seat, his wife sent him a message. "Don't have anything to do with this innocent man, for I have suffered a great deal today in a dream because of him." But the chief priests and the elders persuaded the crowd to ask for Barabbas and to have Jesus executed. Right? So one could make an analogy, one can make a parallel conclusion and say the chief priests and the elders in this situation are comparable to state prosecutors, so on and so forth, right? Or the federal prosecutors. So it goes on to read, "Which of the two do you want me to release to you?" asked the governor. "Barabbas," they answered. "What shall I do then with Jesus, who is called the Messiah?" Pilate asked. They all answered, "Crucify him." "Why? What crimes has he committed?" asked Pilate. But they shouted even louder, "Crucify him." When Pilate saw that he was getting nowhere, but that instead an uproar was starting. He took water and washed his hands in front of the crowd. I'm innocent of this man's blood, he said. It is your responsibility. And the people answered, his blood is on us and on our children. Then he released Barabbas to them, but he had Jesus flogged and handed him over to be crucified. So now, first off, I want to point out that I'm not trying to compare R. Kelly with Jesus. Those are totally two different characters, and obviously, no one can compare to the biblical version of Jesus. So that's not the reason I'm reading the story. I'm reading this story to point out to you that it doesn't matter whether or not a person is innocent or guilty. If they want you, they're going to get you, right? So the only thing that R. Kelly can do is to really put on a big, really strong defense and pray that that defense holds up. But in the grand scheme of things, you have the Me Too movement, or the people in this case, shouting and basically screaming and creating an uproar, and they basically want to see R. Kelly executed. That's what they want, right? So because of this, because of the movie, the documentary, and in my opinion, the documentary has kind of created this uproar, and then you had Michael Avenatti coming out of the out of nowhere and reigniting the flame with these tapes, and then you also have the documentary, and now you have the Me Too movement, and basically they want to see R. Kelly prosecuted. Now, a lot of the things that are coming forth from the new victims, the newest victims, in my opinion, is it's a bunch of nonsense because no real crime has been done to the new accusers, right? All you have to do is just listen to them and listen to some of the things that they're saying, right? Now, some of them may have a civil suit, possibly, but in my opinion, there's no real crimes against any of the new accusers, right? So I'm just going to leave that there. But it really doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter whether or not he's innocent or guilty, because just from reading this story, you can see some parallels that, and one of the major parallels that you can see is that when people want to see you go down, they will do anything in their power to see you go down. And unfortunately, right now, that person to be crucified, or the person they want to have crucified, is R. Kelly. And people who support him, they don't they are stuck on this concept of right and wrong, but what they're failing to realize is not about right and wrong. It's more or less about, this machine that's been put in place that can be used to basically destroy you. So in this sense, it's not about right and wrong, because Jesus was right and they still crucified him. It's more about people wanting to see you destroyed and their willingness to do whatever it takes to see you destroyed. Put yourself in R. Kelly's situation. You have to figure out if it's worth the risk to roll the dice or to run the gauntlet to see if you can beat the game, versus taking some sort of plea deal that's going to allow you to basically move on with your life after serving 3 or 5 years, which is what some people think he'll get, right? A plea deal for 3 to 5 years, or rolling the dice and getting 30 to 100 years, right? So those are some of the choices I think is going to come, towards R. Kelly. I'm not sure it's going to be that low of a plea deal where he would get 3 to 5 years. They may offer him a plea deal, something like 15 to 20 or something of that nature. But for the most part, if you were in that situation, you would have to consider all your options, right? So yeah, it could be negative to think about the sentencing when the case hasn't even started and hasn't even been put on. But these are some of the things that people think about when they're on trial. And this is actually some of the reasons people admit to crimes they didn't commit, because they don't think they could win the case. They don't think it's worth rolling the dice and taking the risk and then being in jail for the rest of their lives. I've actually done another video called "Would You Plead Guilty to a Crime You Didn't Commit?" You should take a look at that video, because that video basically flat out shows you that people actually pled guilty to a crime which they didn't commit, where their co-defendants didn't plead guilty, and then they ended up getting, extra time. So all these things are things to think about. So I may do one more video in this series. I'm not sure if I'm going to do it. I'm thinking about doing it, and that video is going to take a look at each statute and the amount of time that is associated with violating that statute. That's an incredible amount of work. I may not want to go through all that. I may do it. I may not. We'll see what happens. But at any rate, leave your questions, comments below. Let me know what you think.